I'd like to see your father, Mason.
I'm afraid I can't help you. He's not home yet. Probably out foreclosing on an orphanage.
Now, Warren's going to have to grow up sometime. He can't always have his father's mistress fighting his battles for him. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got something to attend to.
Welcome to week 91 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We've watched 91 weeks of Santa Barbara. We watched episode 440, originally aired Monday, April 21st, 1986. Cece hires Mary to take care of Kirk when he comes home tomorrow at noon. So we'll be seeing Kirk again in the next episode, I trust. Mm-hmm. It's one of those long, long days. So they're really keeping Mary around the Capwell orbit.
Yeah.
People keep getting critically ill.
No, I'm assuming Kirk will treat Mary a little bit better than he's treated Haley, and we assume the rest of the help.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Mason says, haven't you had enough of this family? You've managed to survive taking on my father. Don't press your luck. He could afford to resurrect Florence Nightingale. Mary starts setting up the room, and Mason comes and tests out the rowing machine she set up for Kirk. Mason says, that'd be great if it didn't make you so sweaty. He, of course, is wearing his three-piece suit when he does it. Kirk will be ready for the '88 Olympics. Saved by a Capwell heart. That would make a good country song. So a lot of fun dialogue in this one. It's probably that, is it Patrick Mulcahy that A said wrote all the great dialogue? Or is that the guy from Aftermash?
Seeing this rowing machine actually reminded me of something that that Lane Davies mentioned on the cruise, which was, and maybe it was even his rowing machine. He said he had exercise equipment in his trailer that he never used. He would use it to kind of hang stuff on. And that's why you almost never see a scene where Mason is topless.
They discuss David and Madeline not being the perfect couple. And Mary says that every marriage has problems. And then they talk about what Mason's looking for, and she ends up summarizing, you're looking for love. Mary tells Mark that there's more to them than what they do in the bedroom. And he wonders if Mason is part of her plans for a fun marriage, but she says she would never hurt them. And they have a sort of very nice scene, sort of, coming to terms with the fact that he's going to be impotent for a while, and Mason has to watch them kissing. So, it seems like they've perhaps, patched things up for a while anyway.
Yes, although I was struck by the fact that, Mary, and maybe it's because they've patched things up a bit, but Mary does seem to be a little more relaxed, I thought, around Mason. And, she doesn't mind talking to him. She doesn't mind, at one point she invites him to sit at the table with her when Mark has to go off, to tend to an emergency. Mm-hmm. So she seems a little bit more relaxed in her relationship with Mason as well.
No, she's quite drunk at the end of that when she finally gets up. I don't know if she was drinking that much before Mark left, or if that was after Mark left. Mason tells her that he can't go back to his old Casanova ways. Kelly runs away from the hallucination of Peter sitting on the headstone. And of course, smack into Dylan. Dylan grabs her and asks her whose grave that is. He tells her he knows all about Peter. Kelly, of course, is seeing Peter's face on Dylan. And Dylan shouts, Peter is dead! Now stop running! You can't escape me! Which is a great line because it makes her think of something that Peter once said to her.
Yeah, he's really not presenting himself as that much of an improvement over Peter.
And then he forces himself to kiss Kelly as they go to commercial. So, he's really not doing a great job dissociating himself from Peter because he's doing a lot of Petery things.
Yeah.
And Stephen Meadows isn't credited in this episode, so I think they once again used either still photos or older scenes of him, which is probably why they had him in that jacket. That I think he was probably wearing that during the crazy desert scenes when he was doing a lot of ranting and shouting. She tells him she didn't leave Nick to be with him, And he asks, well, what do you want from me? And she says, I want you to leave Santa Barbara forever. And he agrees if she'll spend one more night with him, just like they did in Santa Rosa. Kelly agrees to that and then runs off home, saying, not now. I don't think she's planning to go through with that.
No, and I don't think so either. I think she just told him that to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one thing that really struck me about the scenes between Kelly and Dylan throughout this episode was how much Dylan's reasoning is echoing Nick's a little bit, because all through his courtship of Kelly, Nick kept saying, oh, don't you remember when we were in the ghost town? Don't you remember how good things were?
Mm-hmm.
And we're hearing Nick say the same kinds of things, or Dylan say the same kind of things, only...
About Santa Rosa.
Yeah, in relation to Santa Rosa.
Reaction. Justin pops by and sees Kelly stiffen up every time the phone rings and asks her what's wrong. She just says she's having trouble sleeping. They discuss some hot milk, and then he says, I've got some tea you might like. And she thinks he's asking her over, and she really hesitates strongly because she thinks trouble could be ahead. But he says, I'll bring it over. So while they're having tea, Dylan arrives and demands to know who Justin is. And when he says he's the neighbor, he goes, well, the way home then. Dylan is very annoyed to see that Justin comes and goes through the window. And then it gets angry when Kelly tells Justin to leave it open. Kelly tells him she's changed her mind about sleeping with him. Mm-hmm. Dylan says that it's because Nick still has a hold over her. And he's going to break it. I swear to you that we are going to be together!
Expecting a fairly explosive Nick-Dylan scene coming up.
I mean, this may be... maybe Nick kills Dylan as a result of that scene, Oh no, my Peter Flint flower.
Well, clearly someone has to kill Dylan sooner rather than later.
She manages to get him at the door, though, so at least maybe he's sleeping downstairs in her old apartment, so that she doesn't have to keep trekking back to the Capitol Hotel. Warren arrives to pay Cece. But Cece is out. Mason says he's probably out foreclosing on an orphanage. He doesn't stumble over the word orphanage, though, like I did. Cece runs into Augusta and Lionel at the Orient Express and asks them where Warren is. Lionel tells him to stop going after his family, and Cece says it's just business. I'm sure he doesn't want his father jumping to his defense, so once again he's trying to isolate Warren by keeping his potential help away from him. Try to order something. We frown on non-paying customers. Sophia visits Cece to complain about how he's treating Warren. Cece says Warren's going to have to grow up sometime. He can't always have his father's mistress fighting his battles. Mark mentions the casino robbery to Cece, which Cece hadn't heard about, and then he recalls Brick's been trying to reach him all day. Warren arrives and hands Cece a stack of money. Cece says he's disappointed. He really wanted that land. Warren says, I got the money by mortgaging the land. But Cece notices that Warren is short, and he says, the bank needs 2 more days to get me the rest of it. And Cece says, well, you've got 1 day. Warren tells Lionel and Augusta the land is safe, but he won't tell them where he got the money.
No.
Brick and Sophia help treat Warren's wound. Warren says, what are you, some kind of med school dropout? And Brick says, you grew up in the circus. Warren says, we both did. Brick says he finally accepts that they are brothers. So Warren might still have a little bit of a wall up, but I think that was a good bonding scene.
I think so too. I was a bit surprised he came up short after that big robbery. So obviously he racked up a lot of debt. But it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here, because we know the bills are marked. So the minute CC tries to use them, the jig will be up in terms of knowing that this is the stolen cash. So it'll be really interesting to see if Brick and Sophia can maybe help to save Warren, if they're going to clue in Lionel to what's been happening. Yeah, I'll be interested to see where it goes from here.
Mm-hmm. Sophia's been trying to talk to Warren all episode, and he keeps blowing off. So finally, she warns him that the money was marked.
Yeah.
Cece gets angry with Sophia, assuming that she's the one who lent Warren the money. She does not disabuse him of that theory.
Mm-hmm.
Cece gets a call from the police telling him, well, the good thing is the money was marked. Cece thinks that's great. I'm thinking, well, I don't know. It's only great if someone obviously tries to pass it in a place that's going to check for marked money. I mean, if it goes to a bank, But they both seem to think that's, really going to help them catch the guy. Then Cece contemplates this big stack of bills that Warren handed him earlier.
Yeah.
I suspect Cece will have the bills checked himself.
I think that's highly likely. But, I mean, Warren does have a lot of people in his life, which most of us don't, who could probably cover it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, of course, Cece will have leverage over him if he discovers that they were the stolen bills.
I mean, Cece will remember that Warren stole those coins, right? And he'll think, well, it's not out of his nature to do something like this.
Yeah.
So, he might also be a little angry that Amy and Sophia were on that boat, which she was told earlier. All right, that flower falling off means we've reached the end of an episode. So we'll be back after we watched episode 441, and if I remember correctly, there will be a bit of a surprise. Happy or sad? I'll talk about it after we watch 441. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
What are you, some kind of med school dropout?
Well, when you grow up in the circus, you learn a little bit of everything. First day is a must.
I mean, we do have something in common. We both grew up in a circus.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 441 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, April 22nd, 1986. Warren tells Lionel and Augusta that he robbed the ferry. He reveals that Sophia and Brick know. Augusta's a little annoyed by that. He reveals that he gave them the marked money. He gave that to Cece, but he expects to exchange it with Cece for a check for the full amount. I feel like this is a bad idea. Lionel and Augusta reveal to Sophia that they know, and Sophia tells them that the divorce was hard on Warren, and then there's Brick. And Augusta's really annoyed at Sophia's sudden compassion towards Warren. Cece puts the money Warren gave him under an ultraviolet light and sees that it is marked with the word casino in very large letters. Cece apologizes to Sophia for assuming she gave Warren the money. Sophia suggests that he end the feud with the Lockridges. And Cece says, "This is a feud to the finish. One of us is going to crush the other." I think Cece is pretty sure it's going to be him. Warren wants to exchange the cash for a check, and Cece tells him, "Oh, I've already deposited the money." So Warren reluctantly has to write him a check for the difference. Warren is playing it cool, saying, "Oh, that's fine, that's fine, yeah, that's no problem." But secretly freaking out, I think. Maybe he's thinking, "Oh, once it's deposited, if they haven't checked it at the bank, Cece says, "I have a feeling we're going to be doing something together again sometime." So that's a creepy thing. I'm not sure what Cece has in mind other than testifying against him at a trial, perhaps.
Yeah, unless he's got some dirty work he wants Warren to do. That'll work off his debt somehow.
Oh, that's a thought, too. Warren says, "I won't be coming back to the casino." And Cece says, after he leaves, "Don't gamble on it." Now, this is related to something, the thing that Cece was saying that he needed, he needed Dylan out of there by a certain time. Maybe he's got some plan for the oil rig, and maybe he'll get Warren to do it.
Yeah, it's possible.
I feel it's something not above board. So.
Possibly dangerous, probably a bit dodgy, something where all of the risk would be to Warren. And, somehow Cece would be able to cover his tracks.
Judge Stanley walks into the Orient Express and Cece says, hey, how much of a sentence, what's the maximum legal sentence for armed robbery in this state? And that once again leads us to wonder what the exact statutes are 12 miles offshore.
Mm-hmm.
Is Warren really in trouble if it's revealed that he robbed the casino?
Mm-hmm.
Or the ferry. Oh, I guess it depends. Oh, you know what? The ferry was almost ready to dock.
Mm-hmm.
They were just offshore. They were not on the oil rig. Cece tells Lionel to come over to his place at 5 p.m. to talk about Warren.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's got. I don't know if he's going to tell Warren and Lionel two different things and try to blackmail them each for the same thing. Tell Lionel, I know Warren robbed the casino. I want you to do this for me, but don't tell anyone. And then it blackmails Warren with the same thing. Maybe Augusta too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe Minx too.
I mean, one nice thing about this is that they've all been honest with each other, finally.
Mm-hmm.
So Lionel and Augusta do know that Warren has robbed the casino. And I can't remember if he gave them the amount that he owed or not. I think they do know the amount because I think they were quite flabbergasted by it when they were offering to loan him money. So
Yeah, I'm not sure where Warren got the rest of the money or if that check is still going to bounce.
yeah.
Ted tries to help Haley with her cleaning so she can finish her work early and hang out with him. Cece stops him and says he's embarrassing Haley, which he kind of is. Haley does actually say that, and Ted's angry with her for saying that to Cece. Haley says that they can meet secretly in the boathouse. And instead, Ted goes to get Haley a job at the Orient Express and finds her a motel to live in. Haley is not pleased by this. And tells him that she likes her job and she likes being around the Capwell mansion and family. Ted gets angry and tells her it's him or the job. Gina tells her she can't quit. She needs Haley inside that Capwell mansion. So I don't know. I think she's gonna have to break it off with Ted. Really, I mean, she can't really quit. Doesn't sound like she really wants to. I mean, I think her reasoning was partly so Gina would have an in, but I think it was kind of weird having your employer's son find you a motel to live in and finding you another job. It's like she's like really can be in an awkward situation if things don't work out with them, etc. So.
Yeah, and she would still be working for the same family. Actually.
Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing I was thinking about this is, we've definitely, I think, seen an attraction between Haley and Ted, but it's not the kind of fireworks I think we saw with Lakin. So I would say it's possible, certainly, that their relationship could grow into that, but at this point, I don't think they're there yet. So I don't think she's at a point where she's kind of ready to chuck everything for Ted.
But she may have been hesitant too because he's the boss's son, right?
Yeah.
This ultimatum of Ted's is very similar to the sort of thing Cece always does, which is kind of funny since Ted's always the one who's railing against Cece for doing that kind of thing. Eden and Cruz talk about Kirk coming home today. Cruz wants her to move out of the bedroom, but she says it would make Kirk suspicious. Cruz wants to test all of Cece's rifles to see if one of them matches the bullet he found at the boathouse. Eden has the study ceiling painted to cover the stains from last week's flood. And as a result, she gets everything moved into the atrium, including the gun cabinet, which Cruz says was very clever of her to do it that way. Cruz warns, be careful around Kirk. He's clever. And Eden says, I think we're cleverer. She doesn't know that he's got Gina and possibly Haley working for him too.
Yeah, plus I don't think she really knows the depths of his depravity yet. I mean, she was shocked to realize that he was probably responsible for both of the terrible things that have happened to her lately with the explosion and, of course, Gina apparently attacking her and trying to kill her. I think she did finally link up him to the letters, those anonymous letters.
Mm-hmm.
But she does. We've seen just how twisted his thinking has been lately, and I don't think she has any idea just how twisted he is.
Cece tells Cruz he's glad to have Kirk back. Now they can settle down and have a baby, he says to Cruz, and nonplussed Cruz says, yeah, she's been wanting to have a baby. So Cruz is really just, riding the wave of Cece's very undertoned commentary. Cece asks Cruz not to get too graphic about Madeline's death with Kirk, partly probably because he's got Madeline's heart in her. Cece says Mason's a fine prosecutor and David will be convicted if he's guilty. Then he suggests that Cruz and Santana have dinner with him sometime. Or maybe it's just Cruz and him have dinner sometime. Which I can see inside Cruz's head he has no interest in doing, but that sounds like a great idea. He's just, not playing into any of Cece's things.
It's just sort of humoring Cece along.
Kirk comes home, and the role of Kirk Cranston is now being played by Robert Newman. Seems Timothy Bottoms did not opt to renew his contract, and I think he had a movie offer shortly after this time. So we are in the position of having a recast to finish up the Kirk Cranston storyline. So I remember saying, I thought Robert Newman was on Guiding Light for a long time, and it looks like he was on Guiding Light as Josh Lewis from 1980 to November of 84, and then he left the show for 2 years. And during that 2 years, he was on Santa Barbara and on General Hospital. Then he went back to the Guiding Light in 1986, and he stayed there till 91.
Wow.
Left again for 2 years, and then he was on it from 93 to 2009 when it was finally canceled. So he was playing that character for about 30 years.
Wow.
And I think he was playing opposite, I think it might have been Kim Zimmer, who will be on the show at some point in the future.
Now, I actually knew that Timothy, or Joseph, I guess it's Joseph Bottoms.
Oh, did I say the wrong Bottoms?
Yes, a lot of Bottoms brothers, but I actually knew that Joseph Bottoms was going to be leaving soon. We had been watching some bloopers that, some of the copies we have little extra things on them, like ads featuring some of the actors, and one of them had a little blooper of when Kirk was in his hotel, or in his hospital bed. And I remember when we watched it, I remarked to you that sort of thing must be quite rare because they have such tight timelines. I don't think actors really generally have the luxury of fluffing their lines and, making jokes in the middle of filming. And you said at the time, oh, well, I guess he thought he may as well since he was going to leave the show soon. So kind of had that spoiled for me by my co-host. But anyway, so it wasn't a huge surprise, but I wasn't expecting it this episode.
And he was kind of laid back as Kirk in this episode. Even when he was being mean, he wasn't as mean as Joseph Bottoms was, even in the last episode. So, I don't know. I remember thinking he was kind of bland, but I also didn't watch Santa Barbara most of the summer, May through August. So, I really probably only got a couple of weeks of Robert Newman in the role on video, and then I just had audio to go by for the next 4 months.
He's definitely got a different energy, I think, and a slightly less creepy vibe, I would say. I would think that in some ways that will make him a bit more dangerous. Of course, as far as the characters are concerned, he's the same character, but I think it would be really easy, especially in his condition, to kind of take him for granted. So maybe he'll actually end up being a more dangerous Kirk. I don't remember much about really anything other than, there's more conversation about the fact that he has a woman's heart. I'm pretty sure there's more than just those two that we've had.
But, yeah, don't really have any memory of how this whole thing resolves itself with the shooting, either on Gina's side or on Kirk's side. So we will be surprised. So the first thing Kirk asks when he returns home is, how is the case against David going? He says, I feel a sort of kinship towards her, talking about Madeline, and all of the Capwells these days. He finds that Eden has moved her bed out of their bedroom. So I think Cruz had actually asked her to move out of the mansion totally. But, and she reminds him that the doctor said he should have uninterrupted sleep, so that's why she's done it. So I guess he's not back in Mason's room. So I'm not sure who's in Mason's room now.
Well, I was kind of curious at one point. I think it was in one of the episodes, maybe last week, where Mason actually was heading upstairs, and I thought, oh my goodness, is he staying at the Capwell Manor again? And so I wondered, and nothing was ever said about it. And since then,
But Cece was trying to get him to leave
Yeah.
all of last episode. So.
Since then, he seems to have puttered back to his apartment, but it did seem like he was staying there for one night last week.
So both Kelly and Mason's rooms are empty now. Then, I think Eden said where she was staying. I didn't hear it, but I assume she just said she was staying in Kelly's room. But I don't know if you caught it. He tells her that he was dead for a couple of minutes, and he has been given a second chance in life. And Eden says, we've all been given a second chance. That was kind of like not very heartfelt. It kind of maybe had a double meaning in that she has a second chance to put him in jail for trying to kill her.
Yeah.
He asks Cruz if he's 100% sure David killed Madeline. Because he says he's disappointed it turned out to be the man who signed the papers to give Madeline's heart to him. Kirk says, to think a man could be so jealous of his wife that he would kill someone. And Cruz says, I think it happens more often than we know. Kirk thanks Cruz for taking care of Eden while he was sick, and suggests the four of them should have dinner sometime. So this is now 2 invitations from Capwells that Cruz has gotten within the space of an hour. Both dinners. There's no way Santana wants to have dinner with Eden and Kirk.
No.
I'm sure Cruz doesn't either. So Eden says, I guess that's possible. Another heartfelt endorsement. Gina gets Haley to sneak her into the Capwell mansion. Gina watches Eden and Cruz move the rifles into his car. She sneaks into Kirk's room, and Kirk says she should have been dead and tells her never to come again. She says, I'll visit in person any time I think it's necessary. So she's not letting Kirk call the shots at all anymore.
And I think in this conversation she also... Now, I don't know if... I was trying to remember, it's been a few days actually since we watched the episode, but there is one scene that Gina has, and I thought it was the one with Kirk, where she actually reveals that she told Eden that he was trying to kill her.
And he's pretty upset that she let that slip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she says she wants him to help her come up with a story so that she can rise from the dead. And as I said, I don't remember how this resolved itself. I have no idea what story they come up with for her to be A, alive, and B, not end up in jail. So, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to this, to see how they do it. Because presumably she will come back at some point. I've seen pictures of her with other characters in future episodes, and she's not in jail, so she must come back to life. She looks out the window, and whether this is true or not, she says, oh, Cruz and Eden are in the driveway, and they're standing awfully close to each other. Kirk says it doesn't matter what they're talking about. None of this will be going on anymore. So, does he think Eden suddenly loves him, or has he got another plan to put an end to Cruz and Eden forever that he hasn't even revealed to Gina, which of course makes sense because she's always recording things.
Well, he's been spending a lot of time lately just lying in a hospital bed thinking about things, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was strategizing some new plan.
Mm-hmm. I doubt he could rope Haley into a murderous plan like Gina, just on the threat of revealing Gina's her aunt. So, have to do his own dirty work, I guess. But if he's fit,
Yeah.
you know, he's, that typewriter's gone from the attic, so we won't have to lug that around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Cruz isn't really doing any more official research on the murder with Gina dead. It's just the unofficial thing.
Well, he's got the Madeline murder to
Right, I guess that's his. So we forgot to mention a couple of Santa Barbara people we saw in Policewoman. We saw Paula Kelly's third and final appearance the other day, and in the next episode we had, I forgot who, a new Charles Cipher, John Cipher, who plays the police commissioner on Hill Street Blues, and he'll be playing. I think it's Arthur Donnelly he plays in a few years. So, so two Santa Barbara people 2 days in a row on Policewoman. So that is it for a Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we see episode 442. See you then.
Bye-bye.
I don't like the idea of having some wizard here poke around in my memory banks. And besides, look, I mean, what if he asks some personal questions, parental guidance material, stuff I don't want to go into, buddy? But you push the wrong button, I'm more dangerous than 3 Mile Island.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 442, which originally aired Wednesday, April 23rd, 1986. Cruz brings Dr. Reynolds in. Dr. Reynolds is another R-named doctor, like Renfro, and we haven't met Rawlings yet, and there was another one I don't recall now. Anyway, he's a hypnotist, and he wants to hypnotize Pearl to help him remember what was going on around him while he was waiting in the car. Pearl says, well, if you push the wrong button, I'm more dangerous than 3 Mile Island. Which is a fitting line for the week. Under hypnosis, Pearl remembers seeing a toddler on a bicycle and a guy in a brown suit and raincoat jogging, which is actually kind of a weird jogging outfit. So I wonder if that's suspicious. The doctor has to leave suddenly to get a replacement battery for something. I assume it was some sort of hypnotic light he was using. I didn't quite catch why he needed a battery.
Yeah, I didn't either. I thought maybe he was recording it.
Oh, maybe it was a recorder. Yeah, maybe that was what died. Anyways, while they're waiting for him to come back, Cruz suddenly gets called away by Eden. And Courtney takes the opportunity to ask Pearl his real name. Michael Baldwin Bradford III. He recalls summers in the Hamptons, his love of the New York Philharmonic, and his headmaster at Beresford complaining about his peace button. The doctor returns, angry at Courtney. When Pearl is brought out of the hypnosis, Courtney reveals what she did, and as you can imagine, Pearl is angry with her. He says she took advantage of him because that's what rich people do to everyone. Courtney says he's the judgmental one for assuming all rich people are the same. He tells her his family never came looking for him, and Courtney says she has no sympathy, because he should have contacted them. Pearl says he doesn't want any sympathy from her. And later, Julia tells Pearl she wants to be friends again. But he's not in a good mood. He says he was just a curiosity to her, a walk on the wrong side of the tracks. The only reason I'm staying in this town is for your trial. After that, I'm putting on my captain's hat and sailing out of here.
This whole part of the episode actually made me really angry for the complete, utter lack of professionalism on the part of Cruz and the doctor. And I feel like if this were a more litigious society, they would both be massively sued. Because obviously the doctor, first of all, they're having it at Cruz's boathouse. So
and surprising Pearl with it.
Yeah, surprising him. So I just can't see any of this would have ever held up in court. And of course the doctor doesn't bring spare batteries, which seems pretty bizarre if he's their go-to expert. And then Cruz just leaving while Pearl's in a very vulnerable state under hypnosis. Just to at Eden's beck and call is, as I say, I think if this were a more litigious society, or, I don't know what the equivalent is for malpractice for cops, but I feel like a real world scenario would be a very bad scenario for Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was completely with Pearl in his anger, and of course he was very angry at Courtney, who I think her motivation was a little more impish and wanting to know more about him and seeing her opportunity. I did wonder if she was perhaps familiar with his family, because she sort of, when he gives his name, she says, "Oh, is that the Baldwins of New England or whatever?" So I kind of feel like maybe there's a bit more in common there. But, Pearl does make the point to Courtney that he was in a very vulnerable place and feels taken advantage of, which I completely agree with. And I kind of wish he was, in his conversations with Julia, launching a lawsuit right now against the Santa Barbara Police Department and their medical expert. But that's not, I think, where this show is going to go.
No, I don't think so.
However, this is a case where real life actually might have been more dramatic, just around this one scene.
We haven't seen Pearl talk to Cruz after the incident. So.
Yeah.
And I guess the big reveal was sort of along the lines that we had guessed, that he came from a wealthy family. So we'll see if his accent becomes more Boston-y.
Yeah, I wouldn't have actually placed him as having a Boston accent.
Some kind of New England. The role of Kirk Cranston is still being played by Robert Newman. The announcer takes the opportunity to remind us. Kirk tells Eden the good news. The doctor says she can move back into the bedroom. Now, it's only been one day, hasn't it? Like the one night that she didn't sleep there, unless many days have passed in between these episodes. He says, this new heart has given me new confidence, new strength. I have a lot of good years left. I don't want to live out the rest of my life in some kind of jealous misery. So I think this kind of puts Eden at ease, and Robert Newman is playing it so low-key, we're not quite sure if we believe him or not. Like, maybe we do believe him. While Kirk sleeps, Eden searches his pants pockets and finds receipts from the Santa Barbara Gun Club. Cruz talks to a cop who's a member of that club, and he remembers Kirk a few weeks ago taking lessons on a sighted hunting rifle. And Cruz tells Eden that every Capwell gun had Kirk's fingerprints on them, as if he tried them out. So he wants her to move to a hotel, but she says, "Oh, Kirk seems better." Cruz says, "Don't start trusting Kirk."
And I think this is where the change of actor, as I was saying last time, actually he might be more dangerous, because, as you say, we actually kind of believe him. And the actor is much more low-key, whereas the last one was pretty obviously creepy to everyone but CC. So it'll be interesting if we see actually sort of more subversive actions on his part, because he is lower key.
A change of personality is believable after a major,
Yeah.
surgery like this, I think, even in real life. And then on soaps, they sometimes take an actor change as an opportunity to change the character of a person. Like with Gina, they tweaked her slightly. But it's also that thing of maybe Robert Newman doesn't know how Kirk is really feeling, and he's just playing what's written on the page and kind of playing it neutral. So that, well, he obviously wants Eden to believe him, so maybe we're believing him just because of that he doesn't know if Kirk's going to go back up the deep end or not. Kirk dreams about shooting Cruz and Eden while they dance in the Capwell boathouse. So I guess he is still harboring ill will towards his wife and her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Eden waves at Cruz from the bedroom window and turns to find that Kirk has awakened and is staring at her. So we'll see if Robert Newman can become as creepy as as Joseph Bottoms. Did I say the right Bottoms this time? Timothy Bottoms. Joseph Bottoms, right?
I think it's Joseph.
Darn, I should write that on a post-it. Yeah, so I think, well, if he's ready enough to have Eden in the bed, by tomorrow he'll be up and about, maybe walking with a cane and wreaking havoc, and probably trying to track down Haley to see what he can blackmail her into doing for him. Kirk asks to see David, and he thanks him for giving him the heart. And then he says, I understand your wife may have had an affair. I can certainly understand the rage of a jealous husband. So, it's a bonding between David and Kirk. That's lovely. Everyone's kind of like, you really want to see David? Okay, well. Julia asked David to come up with some character witnesses, and David wants to focus on who Madeline was meeting. But Julia says, well, we can't let the jury think that you knew she was meeting someone. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but I can't imagine Mason not bringing that up on day one. So it seems pointless, really, to try and hide it.
And in every Perry Mason we've ever watched, I mean, Perry Mason actually has a private detective on retainer. So they're always trying to drum up alternative, suspects to get their clients off. So I would think that would be a go-to strategy for Julia.
Yeah, I think she's, saying a lot of things that we can't do, but Mason's just going to make it so you got to do them all. She's going to have to throw Pearl under the bus and probably have to reveal everything. So Cece tells Lionel some bad news. Your son Warren robbed the casino. He tells him, go talk to Augusta and come back at 5 with an offer to keep Warren out of prison. Lionel tells Sophia that Cece is blackmailing him. Sophia tells Cece that he is despicable. She says this is not Warren's feud any more than it is Kelly's or Ted's. Sophia says this lifelong obsession has poisoned you. And Cece counters with, I wasn't sick until I found out about you and Lionel. So Cece tells her to get out. Lionel returns, and Cece makes some comment about the sherry that he offers Lionel coming from his vineyards, and Lionel says, I've got some vineyards in France. Maybe you'd like those. And Cece says, yeah, that's a good start. And then Lionel says, what about my South American plantation? My Texas oil fields? What do you want? Cece says, all of it. Including your house. Lionel says, the house my grandfather and father were born in, that Minx considers, and Cece says, I don't care what Minx considers. I want your house and everything else, so your son goes to prison. Cece is quite evil. I think, could we be seeing the complete downfall of the Lockridge family in the next episode?
Well, I hope not, because that would make the whole rest of the series a bit more dull. I mean, we saw what happened to the entire Perkins family as the series rolled along. So it'll be interesting to see how they get out of it, because obviously CC would not be interested in money. I mean, they could perhaps get money from Sophia. I mean, that's already been put on the table as a possibility for Warren, or at least she kind of mentioned it to Cece. But I don't think he wants that. He wants the lands, and he wants to completely bankrupt the Lockridges. So
I don't see, short of if they find something to blackmail him with, I can't see how they're going to get out of this unless they tell Warren, well, unless Warren turns himself in and says, okay, well, I'm not going to let my family lose everything. I'll go to jail.
Yeah, I think that might be their only option, is giving up Warren.
I think a plus will be that we've got to see Minx again soon, if not in the next episode. So it'll be nice to see Dame Judith Anderson again, and she'll be angry. So that's always fun. She'll get a little riding crop, go after Cece perhaps. So looking forward to that. But yeah, I really don't see a twist. It's either going to be they give up Warren or they lose everything and maybe have to claw it back somehow. I don't recall. I don't recall actually what happens, but I do recall seeing a Lockridge or two for the next few years. So Yeah, I guess we'll find out maybe as early as this week. This was an exciting Wednesday episode, midweek. It's usually the laggard of the week. We got another doctor named with an R name. We'll be back after we watch episode 443. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I want all of it. I want all of the Lockridge Holdings here and abroad. I want everything here, Lionel, including your house.
You want the house I was born in? My father, my grandfather were born in? Minx considers that.
I don't care what Minx considers. I don't care anything about Minx. That's the deal. I want your house and everything else. But your son goes to prison.
You have a long lifeline. Well, that's interesting.
What?
Your love line is as long as your lifeline.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 443 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, April 24th, 1986. Mary sees a photo album and flips through it, stopping at a photo of Mason that I think looked very much like this one. Kelly comes by and comments that she likes that photo because Mason looks so happy in it. Mary's hands are sore from massaging Kirk, so Mason massages them and takes the opportunity to read her palm. That old gambit. You've got a long lifeline, and your love line is as long as your lifeline. Justin tells Kelly that Nick dropped by and called her Kelly Capwell. Is she one of the Capwells? Dylan tells Mason that he and Kelly have a relationship that Mason knows nothing about. Mason says your imaginary love affair took a nosedive when Nick came back, which seems to shock Dylan. Nick shows up at Kelly's and asks her what she's been doing, and Kelly says she doesn't have to account her time to him, and he says that he's just here as a friend. She says she doesn't even want to be friends now. So, Nick says that Justin told him that Dylan's been bothering her. And then Dylan shows up. I knew you'd be here, says Dylan. Kelly says she wants them both to go. Nick grabs Dylan, and Dylan pulls a huge knife. It's like halfway to a machete, as far as I can tell. You try that again and I'll kill you, says Dylan. Dylan sees the knife in his hands and starts shaking and whimpering. I don't know why I did that. Kelly, please forgive me. I never hurt Nick. I never hurt anyone. Kelly says, why can't you leave me alone? I'm sick of you both. This is a couple of interesting twists here. Dylan's gone full on psycho.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly doesn't even want to be Nick's friend now. Bit worried about Dylan.
Well, I think, too, it was kind of interesting, actually, the exchange just previous to this, before, between Mason and Dylan, where he says, Nick kind of said he was back with Kelly, or he made it sound like they were back together, which makes it sound like maybe Nick's as delusional as Dylan at this point.
Oh, I thought that Mason was just saying that to kind of taunt him, but maybe
Well,
you're
that's
right, because we don't know
possible,
what Nick and Mason said.
We don't
to each
really
other.
know what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, I'm assuming Nick had his trip to New York and is now back. Maybe
that's the back. that you're
Yeah,
talking about.
I don't know, but it just seems to me like we're ending up where we've talked about it ending up with this relationship where Kelly doesn't really want anything to do with either of them, and sort of a pox on both your houses, Hartley brothers. So I think we may end up with the Hartley brothers duking it out for Kelly, who doesn't even want either of them at this point, and will be happily perhaps spending a nice jazz evening with her neighbor instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that Nick's first scene, if he has back from New York is with the Kelly storyline and not the murder mystery that he was sent to New York to try and solve. Cece shows up at the Lockridge house to see if Lionel is ready to turn over the house. Lionel has a counter-proposal. Nothing! Except for what Warren owes the casino. Cece says, "You're quite a salesman. I might buy a mattress from you, but I'm not buying this. Come by at 7 to sign over the house." Lionel asks Cece to just drop the feud that started over a quarter of a century ago. Warren shows up and finds out what's been going on. So, yes, this is just the first of several people who tries to get Cece to drop it during this episode, and seems to just get increasingly dug into the idea of stealing everything. Mm-hmm. Augusta shows up at the Lockridge mansion as Lionel is packing his books, and Brick also comes by to say he's sorry. Lionel says, "You can tell your boss that every time he comes around the corner, he's going to find me there. I'm going to dig in my heels and do battle with him until one of us is in the grave." This might be a good kicking off point if they ever do a Santa Barbara sequel series. It could start off with Cece's death and Lionel somehow to blame after finally getting the upper hand after all those years. Brick said, "Oh, is it true you're leaving town?" So I don't know. That's another off-screen thing I think that maybe happened. But so Lionel's going to dig in. He's just never properly gotten one over on Cece and all the things we've seen. He's only accidentally got one over on Cece with the paintings, thanks to Mason's help.
That was really Mason getting one over on Cece.
Yeah.
It's set up Mason for life now. So
I don't know how Lionel's really going to... Augusta asks Sophia to intervene with Cece. She kind of says, you kind of owe us. Cece tries to get Cece... Sophia tries to get Cece to change his mind, but by bringing up, things are kind of changing between us. I kind of lose all respect for you if you go through with this. Cece says, "No, this is just a logical continuation of the poker game Lionel and I started, and there's no future with you, and I don't have respect for you whatsoever." So he's just doubling down on everything right now. Cece gives Brick a check to cover Warren's owings, and Brick reveals he knows Warren is the one who robbed the casino. But he knows that Cece's not planning to go to the police because that money came from Cece's personal account, and he's probably got some plan against the Lockridges. And Cece says, "By midnight tonight, every square inch that Lionel owns will be mine."
And throughout this exchange, Cece is continually kind of baiting and making threatening noises at Brick, and Brick's just not having it. And so far, I would say Brick has probably had the most success in handling Cece, in that he just doesn't let him get under his skin.
I feel like Cece's really trying to suss out if Brick can be an ally, or at least not an enemy, with all these questions. Because then he says, what have you got planned, to get back at Minx for everything she did to you?
Yeah.
And he says, well, if I did something, then I would be just as bad as her.
I think, too, perhaps Cece does recognize Brick's skill as well. And so he would actually value, I think, having Brick as an ally.
Warren accuses Brick of telling Cece that he was the robber. Brick says the money was marked and he figured it out for himself.
Which I thought Warren already knew. I thought
he knew the money was marked,
that,
so Warren's really not letting Brick kind of make amends, Brick says, well, I wish I had turned you over because Lionel shouldn't be the one to pay. He's over at the Capwells right now, signing over the house. Augusta asks Mason to intervene. She's, really doing her best here. Mason's only got about an hour. But Mason shows up in the atrium with a thick typewritten book and tells Cece he's written his memoirs. It's all about Channing and what Cece did to Joe Perkins and Gina and Brandon. And he's working on the last chapter about Cece blackmailing Lionel. and wonders if maybe the police would be interested in it, unless Cece changes his mind about how that chapter should go. Cece says no publisher would publish that because of the threat of $100 million slander suit. So Cece does not take that as a potential threat at all.
Mm-hmm.
Mason leaves and hands Augusta the book as she and Lionel arrive. And Cece grabs the book and flips through it, and every page is blank.
Yeah.
Augusta says, "What's that?" And Cece says, "It's the story of Mason's life." Augusta wants Lionel to wait until 7 because Minx has been told. Lionel said, "No, she doesn't know." But Augusta said, "No, I phoned her. She's on her way here." And I thought, oh, maybe Minx has some thing she can pull out of her sleeve, you know. But first Warren arrives and says he's going to turn himself in so that they don't have to sign over the house. But Lionel stops him from making the call, saying, "Oh, this is really all my fault." And he signs the paper over to Cece. So Lionel says, "You've just accepted your passport to hell." And Cece says, "I'm sure I'll see you there." And they leave, and Cece kind of looks at the paper and throws it on the table. He's not really happy. I think he'd be gleeful after that. But he's kind of just got a neutral look on his face. Now I'm wondering if Minx is going to arrive now with some last-minute thing she was planning to do, and only to find that Cece already has the papers. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Because I think when we were discussing the possibilities of this, I thought it would be sort of a long sink down after this for the Lockridge storyline, because they're not really, to me, quite as compelling without their rivalry with the Capwells, and that rivalry needs them to be in the money, at least to a certain extent. So, yeah, we'll definitely see where it goes. I'm sure Minx won't be happy with Lionel. Perhaps she'll disown him, which she's always threatening to do, so.
I mean, really, she's going to pack up and leave her own house if she doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, unless she barges in and Cece says, "Oh, I'll let you stay there for a fee or something." You know.
It's possible that, she had Brick hold some things back that wouldn't be affected by this.
Yeah, presumably.
I mean, they all know how crappy Lionel is at managing money, so.
Yeah, I would think that everything's not in Lionel's name. I mean, there's a certain amount, obviously, he can sign over. But, I mean, the fact is, Augusta had to be there to sign the house documents, too, so it must have been the divorce settlement. You know, maybe she was still on title, etc. at that point. And he's talked her into going along with it, obviously, so, but I don't think he would have talked Minx into it.
Yeah, I mean, the only sort of option I can see for Lionel is if he remarries Augusta, and at least he'll have the money she got from Cece for the paintings.
They'll move into Kelly's old apartment.
As everyone does.
Sally's apartment, really.
And we'll see them walking Bryony eventually.
Wonder what Bryony and Breeze are up to. I don't know if Breeze is living in the Capwell Hotel with Augusta, or wherever she was planning to move in with Julia, which I don't think has happened yet. So Kelly moved in like 2 hours, and Augusta's been sort of dithering. So I don't know. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this happens. I just can't see the Lockridge just staying completely decimated like this. Whatever the inverse of decimated is. That's it for the Thursday episode, and I'm hoping Minx shows up in this whole she's going to be here at 7 thing was just not another way to keep her off the screen, and then tomorrow they'll say, "Oh boy, Minx was sure angry when we told her what we did." This is one of the draws of this show. We'll be back after we watch episode 444 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to stay. Yeah, you can tell your boss that every time he comes around a corner, he's going to find me there. I'm going to dig in my heels and do battle with him
until one of us is in the grave. Deep down inside of you must know that you've just accepted your passport to hell.
Maybe so, Lionel. But I'm sure I'll see you there.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We have finished episode 444 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, April 25th, 1986. We're recording this on July 30th, 2022, the 38th anniversary of Santa Barbara, and the 3rd anniversary of our podcast. We have some non-show related news. As you might have heard, we watch St. Elsewhere every Wednesday, and this week we saw someone who looked very much like Richard Eden. He only had one line, and he wasn't in the credits, and Richard Eden's IMDb page doesn't have that name, but I'm going to flash up some photos here, and you decide if that's Richard Eden or not.
We thought it was.
Yeah, we thought it was even before he spoke. I said, "Is that Richard Eden?" And then when he spoke, I thought, "I think that is." He just says what's going on here, so not a lot. We've also been watching Police Story. We finally tracked down the 1988 series that was recorded during the writer's strike using old scripts. I found 3 episodes on a Russian website, and we watched one yesterday that had Joseph Bottoms in it. This would have aired October 29th, 1988, so a couple of years after he left Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm. And also Stoney Jackson was in this, who will be showing up as Paul Whitney in a few weeks.
Now, sadly, Joseph Bottoms' character actually was killed off quite early on in the story, so we didn't get to see a lot of him.
No, we were pleasantly surprised to see him, and then the one we watched today, Timothy Gibbs, was one of the main characters. He will be portraying Dash Nichols in a few years on Santa Barbara. And Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, we saw Peter Mark Richmond doing a Russian accent.
We watch a lot of TV.
You can check out our website where we list all our TV shows. Gregory Itzin passed away July 7th, 2022. A couple weeks ago. He played attorney Howard Otis in 3 episodes of Santa Barbara earlier in the run. Okay, that's it for the housekeeping. At the beginning, we'll have a little more at the end. Kelly tells Dylan and Nick that the only way she'll find peace is to get away from them both. Justin comes by to see what all the noise is about. Kelly pulls him in the door and pushes Nick and Dylan out. So she's really using Justin as a good buffer, I think, to keep Nick and Dylan away.
Yeah, and actually I was initially, and I think it's maybe because of the copy we had, it seemed to start very abruptly, and I was initially a little bit confused about whether this was the continuation of the scene from the last episode or whether it was a whole new scene, but I think it was the continuation of the scene from the last episode.
Mm-hmm. This episode in particular was missing the first few seconds of basically every, coming back from commercial break, as the person watching obviously had to hit record, and that takes 5 seconds on a VCR if you haven't simply paused it. Pausing it, of course, will make your heads dirtier, and you'll end up with a worse audio. So, back in the days of recording Doctor Who, it was a decision of do I keep the commercials or do I hit pause in between, and then what if you forget to hit unpause? You've ruined the whole episode. So I'm sure Santa Barbara tapers had the same issues. Kelly tells Dustin that she and Nick were supposed to have been married, and that Dylan is his brother, and something happened with him before. So, and then she tells him that Dylan reminds her of Peter, who, was a problem in her life a while back. After Justin leaves, Kelly either dreams or hallucinates Peter in a tuxedo. Mm-hmm. And Stephen Meadows is credited in IMDb as being in this episode. So he had about a half a second, I think, scene in a tuxedo to garner that credit, which, I looked ahead to see how many episodes he's going to be in. So I was kind of excited he was going to be in this one, and then disappointed when it was only a half a second. Kelly gets up out of bed and goes to the kitchen and takes that knife, the same knife I think that Dylan threatened Nick with earlier, and puts it under her pillow. Nick tracks down Justin at his work. Now, there's a lot of close-up shots here, so we don't really see where they are. The implication is Justin's band is playing there. I'm going to assume they just used a corner of Buzz's, and maybe it's supposed to be Buzz's. But yeah, it was just very close shots of Nick and Justin talking, and then Nick and Justin's bandmate talking, because Justin's bandmate calls him Sigmund as a joke, because we find out that Justin's day job is that he is a psychiatrist, which Nick finds very interesting. I think Nick is still planning to meddle in Kelly's life by maybe sicking Justin on her as a backdoor psychiatrist to help her with all her issues.
Yeah, my other thought was that knowing that Kelly had a very bad experience from her perspective with the psychiatrist that Sophia had set her up with, that maybe Nick's feeling like if she knew that Justin was a psychiatrist, she might not lean on him so much, and therefore might lean on Nick a little bit more.
So you're thinking the exact opposite of what
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because at one point before this, we do get a little bit of foreshadowing, because Justin does say to her that he's a good listener because that's what he does in his job, and he doesn't really elaborate on that. And I was thinking the reason why he doesn't tell her that is maybe because he senses that that wouldn't be a popular thing with her.
Oh, we'll find out pretty quick, I would hope. Well, maybe not. Kelly's only on like once a week now. Gina enters Kirk's room, masquerading as the night nurse, her Hispanic character, whose name I've forgotten, but it definitely is Sanchez, saying that she waited until Cruz drove away, just to rile up Kirk a little bit, I think. Kirk says they at least used to have the decency to meet somewhere else. So they have come upon a plan as to how they're going to explain what Gina said to Eden. They're going to say that when she said he's going to kill us both, they were talking about the mystery blackmailer who was sending Eden notes earlier in the year, not realizing that Eden already knows that Kirk was the blackmailer.
So if they do that, and that gets out there, then really that Gina and Kirk are maybe collaborating a little bit.
Although, I guess the blackmailer notes were all typewritten, but it was the one come to the boathouse that was handwritten. And that's the one that she, linked with Kirk. So I don't think the blackmailer thing is going to be too hard to figure out. They now still need to figure out how Gina's going to explain why she didn't return after falling into the water. And I think that's still being plotted out by them. Gina also says she needs some money to pay the guy she's been staying with. $10,000 should do it, she says. Kirk thinks that's an absurd amount of money, but Gina says, isn't that the same amount Eden paid the blackmailer?
So Angel's going to come into a bit of money, which is nice, I think.
I don't know if Angel's getting any of that money, but
I hope he is, because he did put himself up for Gina quite a bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their plans are for Angel, because they've now turned him from a gang member to, just a sort of minor character. Maybe they've got some plans for him. Kirk says that Eden will be suspicious if Gina doesn't at least perform the night nurse duties that Kirk had already said told Eden would happen, which is that he would get shampooed and shaved and washed. So he ends up letting her off with just shampooing and shaving him. But she says, is there something in that pretty chest you don't want me to see? It was a woman's heart. Don't you feel that it might change you in some way? If your voice starts to get a little higher, don't worry about it. After all, Eden's always worn the pants in the family. So this is, I think, the taunting that I had remembered from all those years ago about Kirk having a woman's heart. I remembered there had been something. And I think it's a fruitful area for Gina to continue needling Kirk about. Maybe Mason will too at some point. It's just the sort of thing he would do. Cece gets angry with Eden for feeling sorry for Lionel. He took everything that ever mattered away from me. My wife, a child that could have been mine. Eden tells Cruz that she thinks Kirk is watching her and that maybe he hasn't changed after all. Kirk asks Eden, just because I have a woman's heart in my body doesn't make me less of a man, does it? So, Kirk's
getting to him.
It's getting to him, yeah. Then, Kirk imagines his left hand turning into a woman's hand. So, it's getting to him a lot. And I remember some of this craziness as well. So I think this will actually not stop there. Eden manages to get out of sleeping in the same room with Kirk, but he suspects Cruz is downstairs. Eden says, if you knew Cruz was here, why didn't you just say so? He was here earlier to see Cece, but now he's gone. And I think Eden just wants to get out of it quickly, so she tries to get up to take another sleeping pill, which starts out as an innocuous thing, but ends up as this huge thing where he's like, oh, I don't think I'm allowed to. She goes, I'll phone the night nurse. And then he's like, oh, I don't have her number. Well, what was her name? She's probably in the book. I think it was Sanchez, which is totally A, not the name that Gina was going by, and B, not a name Gina would be in the book under anyway. But Eden finds it. She goes, oh, I found it right here. It says RN right after the name. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, hi, Miss Sanchez. She's actually calling Cruz. Now, Kirk, of course, knows that she hasn't found Miss Sanchez's number because he's just made it up. So now he knows she's lying and talking to someone else. And she, says, oh, really? It is okay for him to take another sleeping pill? That's great. Kirk. And Cruz says, I'll be over in 10 minutes or something like that. So, anyway, Kirk figures the best way out of it is to be asleep when Eden gets off the phone. And so he pretends to be asleep. And Eden kind of then just leaves. So, yeah, I think Eden thinks she's pulled one over on Kirk here, but not realizing that there is no real night nurse. She's kind of messed up. Yeah, so they're, going to be looking for evidence against Kirk, I guess. Nick visits Cruz and says he doesn't know if he can give up Kelly. Cruz tells him that he found out why he was working for Eden. And says Kirk is a dangerous man. And then Nick says that he had guessed that Kirk was behind the attack on Eden. So they both kind of don't 100% reveal what they know, even though, you think at this point they should just say, exactly why Eden hired him. Cruz returns to the Capwell house, and Eden tells Cruz that she thinks maybe they should use Kirk's jealousy against him and pretend to have an affair and try to trap him. But don't worry, I won't succumb to temptation while we're pretending to be having an affair. And Cruz pretty much says, well, I will succumb to temptation. And they're, of course, having this conversation, as usual, at the front door. And Kirk has managed to limp his way to the window so he can overhear their conversation. And we hear that he can actually hear Cruz's voice. Whether or not he can make it out is not clear. So I think Cruz is going to be just as stubborn as Cece in getting over his infirmity. But, of course, there's always a chance Kirk could, make things worse for himself if he overdoes it. So.
Yeah, I think this little plan of Eden's is going to go ahead whether Cruz wants it or not, just because Kirk feels he's overheard something. I imagine Santana will not be happy about any of this.
Well, they mentioned it to her. Oh, Santana, I'm going to be pretending to have an affair with Eden to trap a killer. With Kirk bedridden, there aren't too many places they can have an affair that he can catch them. And plus they want to catch him at the same time. So, basically the study, maybe. Or the room right next to Kirk's upstairs. So we'll see what they come up with. I think Kirk will start to become more mobile pretty quickly. Otherwise, it just won't work. And maybe the boathouse will be the site. It'll make it easier for them to try and go to confession at a kirk if he does catch them in the boathouse, because he'll be kind of surrounded by the scene of the crime and maybe be psychologically able to be drawn out a bit there. I don't know. Lionel and Augusta return home to an almost empty house, and Minx is sitting on a chair, waiting for them. Minx does a lot of crying in this episode. Lionel admits to her that he's lost the property, and she at first thinks Augusta took it. Mm-hmm. But it's even worse when she finds out that Cece is going to take over the property at midnight. And she says, "Capwell, not as long as I'm alive." And she is also sad that Warren didn't come to her for the money. Lionel says that they'll start over somewhere else, which doesn't really, placate Minx. Augusta visits Cece and points out that he's all alone. He ran out of family members and went after Lionel. So quite similar to some of the things Mason has previously said to Cece, that he's one by one alienating all his children and punishing them for slights and ending up all alone as a result.
I did think it was telling earlier in this episode, as you mentioned, that Eden actually reproaches him a little bit as well. And, she is his most faithful child, so if she's a little bit perturbed by his actions, then certainly I would think most of the people he's related to would be. I think that would be about it for his sympathetic relatives.
Mm-hmm. Augusta says it's a shame that beautiful house is going to be empty and there won't be any family in it to love it, and also tells Cece about poor Minx. And Cece says Lionel and Warren should apologize to Minx for the circumstances. We now return to the Lockridge house, and Minx has a blunderbuss and has threatened the workers who are moving the furniture out. Lionel tells her that if she shoots Cece, his estate will get the house, and she won't have achieved anything. So Lionel takes the gun from her and says he'll get the house back. Now, I looked up to see exactly what kind of ammunition a blunderbuss has, and it's similar, I guess, to a shotgun. It has 10 or so pellets in it, so something like buckshot, I guess, is a similar type thing. Not knowing anything about ammunition, I'm guessing it's not entirely. It's probably similar to what Dick Cheney shot someone in the face with. Lionel takes the gun from her and says he'll get the house back, and she says, "I'll probably be long gone by then." Lionel goes to get a suitcase, and Minx retrieves the gun just as Cece arrives. Cece says that if she shoots him, she'll probably die in a jail somewhere. And she says, "Better than surrender to you." Cece says that she can stay in the house. So this is a nice little something Augusta has said to him, I guess maybe has clicked. So that's a little surprise, actually, for me. But everyone else has to go. And Minx says, "Burn the papers, Cece." And she repeats over and over again for him to just burn the paper that Lionel signed. Cece says, "Your quarrel is not with me. Speak to your grandson. The house is mine, Minx." And Minx fires the gun. Is Cece dead?
I don't think so.
Thought maybe it was. What do you think will be the follow-up to that?
I don't know. I have to say, although I think Cece has behaved quite atrociously through all this, as he often does, I don't think he's entirely wrong. I don't think Minx can rely on Lionel to get the house back or anything. And, for all Lionel was saying that he was forced to do it, I think they could have given up Warren. Warren was willing to be given up. Mm-hmm. And when I think about it, I think a lot of families would have told their kids to just take responsibility. Mm-hmm. So I feel sorriest for Minx. But I actually kind of think, in a way, Cece's right, that this is down to Lionel.
We had cast credits today, and the main change is that Joseph Bottoms is no longer in the credits. I thought this might be one of those weeks where we have both. Like, didn't we have both Ginas at one point in the same credits? But nope, Joseph Bottoms is gone, and Robert Newman is in as Kirk Cranston. Everything else is the same, and in our, day player section, Peter Flint, Stephen Meadows, and moving man, Tony Miller. That's the man that complains to Lionel and Augusta that there's a lady with a shotgun there trying to stop me from moving all the furniture out. So, and that is it for the credits in this episode. That is it for week 91 of Santa Barbara. And it's the end of April, and I have not gotten a job in Vancouver, so I am moving back to Kelowna for the summer. And I guess I presumably did that over this weekend, so I would have been driving home, contemplating watching the follow-up to this episode on Monday, and also knowing I would have to start looking for work once I got to Kelowna. But I probably said, let's wait till May. So I was reminded that my friend Jonas had taken a year off to tour around the world, and back in 1986 he was in Sweden at this time. And that's it for the week. We'll just leave you with some good advice for the weekend. If you push the wrong button, I'm more dangerous than 3 Mile Island. We'll see you on Monday.
Bye-bye.
It's time once again to visit the Kirk Cranston Trauma Tracker. As you will recall, last time Kirk Cranston had his heart removed. Well, good news for him, it has been replaced with the heart of Madeleine Capwell. Any normal person would be happy that they have a new heart to keep them alive, but unfortunately Kirk finds that he is a little uncomfortable with the fact that he has a woman's heart, and Gina is not helping. So he is worried that having a woman's heart would somehow affect his manhood. Poor Kirk Cranston. The other thing that has happened to him this week, as we predicted, is that Kirk Cranston has lost his head. Luckily, he received a new one.
And there you are.
Yes.
Welcome back.
The role of Kirk Cranston is now being played by Robert Newman.
I'm sure you think it's very strange that I'm taking such an interest in Madeleine's case, but I really feel sort of a kinship towards her and towards all the Capwells these days. I was dead for a couple of minutes.
You know, I thought this new heart would make you a nicer person, Kirk. I guess I was wrong. After all, it did belong to Madeleine.
How do you know Madeleine?
I met her at Mason's aborted wedding. I didn't like her very much. And now you have her heart. Isn't that amazing?
But you know, this new heart has given me new confidence. It's given me new strength and new purpose.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of good years left, you know. I want to live them to the fullest. And I want to live out the rest of my life in some kind of jealous misery.
There's something in that pretty chest of yours you don't want me to see.
Like what?
Oh, I don't know. It must be weird having a new heart inside you that didn't come with the original package. I wouldn't blame you for feeling self-conscious about it.
Why should I feel self-conscious about it?
Oh, come on, Kirk. After all, it was a woman's heart. Don't you feel that it might change you in some way?
What? It's ridiculous.
Kirk, a heart just isn't any old organ. It has personality. They've been writing about it since the beginning of time. It's a symbol.
It's a machine. It's a pump. Doesn't matter if it came from a man or a woman originally. It doesn't make any difference at all.
I'm not saying you're going to start manufacturing the wrong kind of hormones or anything. Not that Eden would notice. She has crews to take care of that part of her life.
I'm warning.
But if your
Stop
voice
right
starts
now,
to get a little
Gina.
higher, don't worry about it. Just go along with it. After all,
Gina.
Eden's always worn the pants in this family.
That's
I'm
enough.
sure she wouldn't mind if you borrowed a dress.
Stop now. Get out of here. Just because I have a woman's heart in my body, it doesn't make me any less of a man, does it?
How long can a man live without his original head? Only time will tell. We will return again the next time the writers dream up some more drama for Kirk Cranston.
I'm impressed, Lionel. You're quite a salesman. You've really put your heart and soul into that pitch. I almost believe that you believe it. Well, I might buy a mattress from you, but I sure as hell won't buy Sophia.